Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity Radio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Fridays here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And as always, follow the show with Hail Varsity at H Varsity Radio. Can follow the show there. Can stream the show live on KFOR's Twitter and Facebook. And as always, subscribe to, check out all the great content with Hail Varsity's YouTube channel. Numbers to get in, 402-489-1240, 402-489-1240, or toll free where you hear us across the Hail Varsity Network, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. Coming up, Jacob Padilla going to get us hoops ready for a monster weekend. Plenty of prep coverage before districts, Huskers in Maryland, all that goodness this weekend at PBA. Coach Williams and company going to pack PBA tomorrow as well. And so we'll get there in hour two. We'll spend time with Bill Doleman. Pride of Fairbury's on a bit of a road trip. He is going to see his long-lost pal, Mr. Bruce Springsteen, tomorrow in KC. So no video with Doleman today, but we will get a phone call probably from the Power and Light District. That is my guess. So Bill Doleman there, Brady Oltmans. Brady's been just killing it, per usual, with his off-season breakdowns, his recruiting coverage, and we'll talk with Brady coming up. And then a weekend preview, some futures if you're into college basketball. Purdue got smacked on the chin last night, but overall, are they a favorite? What do you like about Kansas? Let's start thinking here about the NCAA and some futures bets. Danny Burke with us from VSiN Sports Network to get all that laid out. You have the phone numbers, you have the email, you have the Twitter. Let's get it rolling. Elijah, going to be a fantastic weekend. I know it's our first weekend without football. Don't tell Matt Rule that. At 6 a.m., you got the tweet from Coach Rule, and it was quote tweeted by Hail Varsity, where the dreaded sleds, not the normal sleds you see with snow-covered surfaces, but the sleds you are used to get in shape with or continue your athletic dominance come winter conditioning.
Those sleds are actually the last thing that have made me throw up in a workout. Have been those sleds. Those things are brutal because you stack weight on top of them. You do, and you get and then they're down lower to the ground, so you have to kind of be in a bit of a half squat while you're doing it, and then you're doing cardio.
You got to go forward. Yeah.
No, those things are absolutely brutal.
But then think about this: you're out there. It was 5 below this morning, and you're out there doing work on Memorial Stadium's turf, snow covered with those sleds. Rule ain't joking around with winter conditioning, bringing the winter to winter conditioning. And then, think about the guys who had to get the sleds out there and then bring them back. I mean, that's just part of the gig. I get it. And then you have the football team that's doing the work. Well, and then there's Rule out there just kicking it with his shorts and his parka.
Yes.
I've never pulled that look off. Coach Rule, good work, man. You had the stocking hat on, and I got a kick out of it. But from Blake Shelton to 6 a.m., he's everywhere. But I love that look. I mean, it is absolutely about a mentality.
Well, and it's about showing the guys. It's about saying, this sucks. We're out here in the cold. It's a negative 10-degree wind chill type morning.
Yeah.
I'm out here with you, and I'm wearing shorts. You guys are all wearing sweatpants and stocking caps and hoodies. I'm going to be out here with you guys, and I'm going to be out here in shorts just to let you guys know, hey, I'm right here with you. I'm suffering through. I might not be doing the conditioning, but I'm suffering right here with you. We're suffering together.
That's great. Suffering together.
It's about building that brotherhood. That's what we had Coach Campbell say the other day is about, like, that's what winter conditioning is about. It's about putting these guys through hell. So the adversity creates a shared brotherhood between the guys, and Matt Rule's kind of jumping in there by wearing shorts and showing the guys, you know what, I'm going to be suffering too this morning, but we're going to be building a brotherhood together.
There's a level of respect and camaraderie and support, right, that's developed when you strain and train through something like this. And I love hearing Coach Barnett's take on it because we've asked him about it, and yeah, I mean it's the shared suck. It's what it is, and once you get through it, man, you can look at each other and go, somehow, some way, we got through it. We're better for it. All right, and it's a like-mindedness. And that's been talked about too, with who and why and where you've gone with this staff. Leads us into what we'll start out talking about today. We'll also hear from Fred Hoiberg, and we'll get into Husker baseball a little bit too as they get going tonight down in San Diego. But another part of the World Herald feature and their sit down with Matt Rule, and you've lived this as Nebraska fans the last few seasons. From time to time, you experienced it as a Nebraska fan in some big games. That fourth quarter falter. You are in the game, you either have the lead or you're tied, and the final 15 minutes, you get snuffed out. Sometimes by a large amount, sometimes by heartbreak, but it's still an L. There's been a few instances where Nebraska's been a fourth quarter hero, but that's been quite a few years. And let's dive into the fourth quarter blues, not to get all negative on a Friday, but it's a reality, and it has to change, and it has to change in the Big Ten. And you're not going to win every fourth quarter game, but it's time to start winning most of the fourth quarter games, because that's what they're going to come down to, unless you just build a lead and then pile away with ball control and physical play. And if you're a Nebraska fan of a certain age, that's music to your ears, because that's how you won ball games. It was the Fiesta Bowl against Tennessee. The last time Nebraska won a conference championship, the 99 season, Nebraska ended up playing Tennessee for the 85th time, it felt like, in that decade. And they're down in the Fiesta Bowl. And Nebraska had three 90-yard drives. And it was I formation. It was some fullback trap. There were some big plays to help add up to the 90, but it was physical between the tackle football. It wasn't sophomore Eric Crouch running an option and just keeping it. It was Willie Miller. It was Diedrich. It was Dan Alexander. I mean, it was a steady dose of guys, getting 5 yards after contact. And then once the fourth quarter hit, you look at the Orange Bowl national championship against Tennessee, where they're wailing away. Coach McBride's talked about it. Call the dogs off. You had an All-American Tennessee linebacker that's got smushed by an offensive lineman and then tagged by a fullback as he's crawling off the field. Call the dogs off, Coach. Threw his towel at Coach McBride, the white towel, throwing the towel in. That used to be Nebraska football. It can still be Nebraska football. And I know football's changed and it's different, but it still is about that war of attrition. And are you willing to and able to stand up to it? So here are some things that I think Coach Rule's right on about. One is being fresh. Your winter conditioning translating to better conditioning in the fourth quarter. That's not just a January, February thing or a spring football thing or a summer workouts in the humidity thing, but it translates to the mindset, physically being able to hack it, but also numbers. More of a rotation, more options, more depth. You hear coaches talk about depth all the time. It's very real. And case in point, do you have depth? Do you have a freshness your opponent doesn't have in the fourth quarter? Nebraska used to, hasn't for a while, and that's going to be a priority. It's also a mentality. Are you comfortable being in a tight game? What's the pucker factor? Is it, oh no, something bad's going to happen? Or, oh yes, I'm going to do my best John Elway imitation, and we're going to win this bastard here with a fourth quarter drive? What's your mindset? And too many times, too many teams for too many years saw it fade. It was the oh no moment versus the oh yeah, right? Now, Nebraska ended on the right note with hanging on in a tight ball game that got tight, right? If it's a back and forth where it's a one-score game or it's tied or you're trading leads, hey, those are a little different than having to hang on, playing not to lose, or even a comeback that falls short. I mean, you've seen all different instances, but with Nebraska football, people point out, and Coach Rule mentioned this. What was you're pointing the finger at the onside kick in Dublin. The whole stadium wearing red once they put their beer down or went to go get a new one because they spilled their existing after the onside kick. That's the moment, man. There's a lot of cool plays that happened in 2022. There's some heartbreak that happened in 2022. And then there's the onside kick that it's its own category.
The international incident.
Yeah, the international incident. It's its own category, and people point to it that derailed the season. And Coach Rule's like, that was one play. You had the lead in the fourth quarter. Answer me. Why did you give up the lead in the fourth quarter? Well, Northwestern, back to the 90-yard drive, put a finish. Northwestern didn't do that to anybody else. They didn't win in the United States last year. They won one game all year, and they pulverized Nebraska on the line of scrimmage. You point to one play, but it's really a mentality and a mindset. You had the lead against Northwestern. You had the lead against Wisconsin. You were tied against Minnesota despite having a third-team quarterback.
You were tied against Georgia Southern.
You were tied against Georgia Southern, which you shouldn't have been. But you had ample opportunity. You go back further. Moment in time. One punt return. Sparty. Blocked punt. Iowa, 2021. You had leads against Purdue and Colorado you couldn't hold. You had double-digit leads on the road twice in that season. Mm-hmm. You turned 2 losses into 2 wins. You're bowl eligible or better, right? So to me, it's about shaping this team's mentality. And Rule goes on to talk about the practice part of football. You know, are you doing it because you have to, or are you doing it because you want to? Dude, practice probably sucks. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've not been out there hustling around for a lot of years. Elijah, you're closer to it. But you, how are you going to approach it? Are you approaching it because you're getting better, and there's a method to this madness? Here's the why. This is why you're doing it, or are you just kind of going out there going through the motions? I love hearing Jay Moore talk about practice because he got it, dude. He got a lot out of practice. His approach was the right way to make you the best player you can be, to make Saturdays the easiest part of the week, and there's a real sense to Coach Rule. He wants an identity. He wants to be fast. He wants to be big with his football team. But above all, just know it's going to be tight and it's going to be okay when it comes to the fourth quarter if you're Nebraska football moving forward.
Well, and look at Nebraska, if they can hold on to a lead or if they can go break a game open in the fourth quarter, which I guess that starts right now with winter conditioning, spring ball, and summer conditioning. If you're the fresher team in the fourth quarter and you can go will your way to a victory, Nebraska ends up being probably an 8-4 team last year. When you look at those games that Nebraska either had the lead or was tied going into the fourth quarter, and that completely changes how people look at last season. You go, man, Nebraska was 8-4 despite a bad offensive line and despite all the troubles behind the scenes.
3 quarterbacks, yeah.
I mean, you end up having a successful season with those fourth quarters. And I guess that kind of underscores where some people say Nebraska's so far from being relevant, Nebraska's so far from being good, but they were a fourth quarter away. Now, it happened multiple times, so it's harder to say they're a fourth quarter away from being 8-4, but across multiple games, they're a fourth quarter away from being a 7-5, 8-4 football team going bowling.
It's a big quarter, isn't it?
It's been the most important.
It's been a big quarter for a long time, and even if you're not deep or you're not fresh, fine. Are you tougher? Are you a tougher football team than the other team, than the other guy on the line of scrimmage?
Well, I mean, look how Michigan wears away on teams. When the fourth quarter rolls around, those 2-3 yard rushes in the first and second quarter turn into 6-7 yard rushes in the fourth quarter because you're the fresher team,
and
you're the more physical team.
How many beers did your old man crack open once that started happening? Well, we got him now. TV timeout on the field because there's 3 linemen down and they need to be drug off the field because they're physically and mentally exhausted from the body punches. That is what Nebraska was and needs to become again.
The question is, how quickly can Nebraska become that?
Well, they're starting the right way by freezing their ass off on a Saturday morning with wind chills and those dreaded weight sleds out on the Memorial Field turf.
I mean, and that's the first we've seen of Matt Rule embracing what he said in the opening press conference, which is we need to embrace the weather in which we play in. Well, this is the first we've seen it.
Yes, they do. Hey, no sleeves, get out there. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. We'll get to some of your comments in the stream. Jacob Padilla going to join us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Big weekend of high school action. Some monster matchups in Nebraska. Goes for 4 in a row against Fear the Turtle. Hail Varsity on a Friday continues.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, presented by Currency, weekend edition. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I hope you join us if you're out for a coffee and donut. We say hi to Jacob Padilla this afternoon on Hail Varsity Radio at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. Big weekend of basketball. Jacob, how we feeling?
Sorry, you're cutting out there. What was the question?
How we feeling? Big weekend of basketball.
It's big for obviously both Huskers men's and women's team. Conclusion of the regular season for high school. So a lot of hoops going on this weekend. Pinnacle Bank Arena, I think it's going to be rocking both days.
It'll be outstanding atmospheres, and the Big Red Faithful have really shown their support this year, and they've had a lot to be excited about with Fred and the crew. As you look at this, and I love your padding the stats column, Jacob, on HailVarsity.com, you look at why things have kind of shifted, and it's really been interesting where 3 weeks ago and guilty a month ago for me, I'm like, I don't know if they win again, maybe 1 or 2, and we're talking, Fred's future. That discussion has shifted to surprise and a little bit of awe with what they've done. How and why has Nebraska been able to flip the conversation? Why are they winning? How are they winning with this awful hand they've been dealt injury-wise?
It starts with Keisei Tominaga and what he's done recently. I mean, you go back, it's 10 games now where he's been in double figures in all but one of them, averaging over 17 points a game during that stretch and shooting 54% from the field and 44% from 3 during that stretch. He's just been spectacular, and he's drawing like top level defenders now. He had Caleb McConnell on him for parts of that Rutgers game, who's an all Big Ten defender, and was still finding ways to get shots off. And he's just become so smart about back cutting at the right time, about popping to the open spot, catch and shooting. He's hitting some tough shots. He can hit with a hand in his face. He's actually better on his contested threes than he is on his wide open ones, oddly enough, which is not usually how that works, but Keisei is an anomaly. So it starts with him. And then just generally from that, it's kind of impacted the rest of the team, and with some other guys stepping up. And the last 4, they've scored 70 or more. They've topped 70 in each of their last 4, won 3 of them. Obviously, you had the Michigan game where Michigan shot 80% from the field or whatever it was. But even in that one, Nebraska was still scoring. They just couldn't get any stops. So we've seen this team kind of turn a corner off and figure some things out offensively. And a lot of it is coming down to shot making. They tweeted out earlier, they've been at 35% or better from 3 in 7 straight games now, shooting 39% overall during that stretch. And the volume isn't crazy outside of this Rutgers game, which means a lot of it's probably just Keisei individually, more so than the whole team shooting great. But that's a starting point. They've been much more efficient offensively, and that's, I think, again, a testament to Hoiberg and his coaching staff for making the adjustments and figuring out ways to put these guys in a position to play to their strengths and to carry the team. Where now we talked about how they changed the identity of the team, focused on winning with defense, hustle, grit, all that type of stuff. And then you lose the two guys that made that possible. And now you got to find a different way. They had the 4-game losing streak starting with that Penn State game when Banamel got hurt, as they were trying to figure out, all right, what do we do now? The defense fell off a cliff during that stretch, and they still couldn't score. Now the defense still isn't great. Like they just physically aren't equipped to get stops at the same rate that they were previously. But their offense is better now, and they're giving themselves chances to win games. Starts with Casey, but other guys have been better as well. And then that Rutgers game, I think, was what Hoiberg thought this team could be offensively, with everybody doing what they're supposed to be good at, with C.J. Wilcher getting out there, hitting 5 threes, which is a career high, but hit 17 points, knocking down some big shots. Casey hitting shots as well, doing what he's doing. That spaces a floor, and now you've got Sam Briesel and Derek Walker, and those guys have room to go to work, whereas they're not getting collapsed on every single time they put the ball on the deck in the paint. So the team is just working together better offensively now, with guys doing what they were brought in to do, and we're seeing the results.
Jacob, when you look at the past week and a half to 2 weeks for Husker basketball, has this resurgence been more a credit to what Fred Hoiberg has done in the coaching job that he's been doing, or is it more down to the players being able to step up and accept the roles that they were given and being able to knock down some shots when it matters?
There's definitely a large part of it just in rewatching these games. Guys are hitting shots. Like going back and watching previously earlier in the year, like I don't know how many really good looks that Emmanuel Banamel got and was still shooting 23% from three or whatever. Just couldn't get him to go down for whatever reason. And that's a big part of why they were struggling the way they had. And obviously they were better, but they still weren't winning enough games to be happy about. Now, I mean, again, Casey's been great these past 10 games or so. CJ Wilcher just had a great game. Sam Hoiberg has been really solid. We've gotten some good games out of Jamarcus Lawrence. Just guys are hitting shots, which makes everything else easier. It's easier to play defense when you're not turning the ball over or missing a shot at the rim and giving them runouts. You have a chance to get back and set your defense and then give yourself a chance to compete on that end versus giving up easy buckets all the time. Offensively, again, the spacing just makes the game so much easier for everybody outside. And I think Fred said today, it wasn't necessarily he didn't completely change their schematics or anything like that. They're playing with better pace. They're cutting hard. They're screening well. All those little things, and then guys are hitting shots. So now they're playing with confidence. So it's all those little things kind of come together. And Hoiberg and staff deserve credit for kind of coaxing that out of the team and putting guys in positions to get these shots. But now we're seeing them start to hit those shots at a better rate than we had all season long, or really throughout the entire Hoiberg tenure.
Jacob Padilla is joining us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ where you find him on Twitter. We're talking Big Red basketball, big weekend at PBA, the men and women get into action, and Maryland comes to town for Fred and company. This is what it's supposed to look like, right? We have yet to see an extended run of Fred's offense, the new identity defensively, and then the execution. There's always been one part of that cog that's been going rogue for whatever reason. You saw a strong finish to last year with Nebraska basketball, and you've seen them right the ship. That's what's so impressive, Jacob, is this is as bad as it could get nearly with who you've lost, with how you hung your hat defensively as the identity, and they've still persevered. Spend a moment here just on the vibe from the team with Coach Hoiberg and just this chemistry and camaraderie. The buy-in's very, very high. It needs to be, but they've gone through so much over the years, quite honestly, that it's really fascinating to see it pay off for them despite all the ups and downs.
Yeah, and that's like in the past 3 years we've seen we've seen him get exasperated at different points with combination of just the results, the way the team was playing, just things not working. We haven't really seen that at this point. Even when they've been lost, he's been pleased, at least publicly, with the effort and the teamwork and all that type of stuff that are so important to building the foundation for winning. They maybe weren't always executing at the highest rate. They weren't getting the shots to go in. They weren't physically winning on defense all the time. But Hoiberg was happy with the way the guys were working, the effort they were giving in the games and in the practice court. And I think that's kept the vibes pretty good all season long, even when they went through some rough patches. And I think this recent stretch kind of illustrates that the most, where you lose two key guys that meant so much to the team. You lose 4 games in a row. Like we were talking about, this thing, the wheels could easily fall off this thing. And then that's when you were wondering, all right, where does this leave Hoiberg? Where before the injuries, you felt like, okay, this is on track for him to come back next year, and we'll see kind of what he can do in the offseason to build off this and add to the roster. Then you wondered, the injuries happening, like, what does this thing look like if the wheels fall off, they win maybe one more game and that's it, things start to splinter. Well, that hasn't happened. Not only have they won 3 games since then, but they're playing better. They obviously up to 13 wins now. They're only a game under 500, which again isn't where Fred wants to be. I don't think anybody's happy with kind of where this is in year 4, but from where it was the last 3 years, it's a significant step forward and could point towards maybe something happening here and building to the future and all that. I mean, obviously losing some of the guys is going to make that hard. There's still a lot of work to be done to capitalize on whatever momentum that they've managed to create here in the stretch. But the guys have continued to work, and I think that's a testament to the leadership, guys like Sam Griesel and Derek Walker, to kind of keep this team together after losing those guys and going through that losing streak to get that win against Penn State, to kind of get this little recent stretch tipped off, and then to come back after that Michigan game to be down by 17, to rally to win that Wisconsin game. And then that Rutgers game, they controlled that game for the majority of it. They kind of pulled ahead. They pulled ahead middle of the second half, then it was back and forth, and then they closed the first half strong and never trailed in the second half. They controlled that action. So credit to everybody there. I think the vibes are good right now.
Jacob, we've got about a minute or so before we got to step away. I want to just get a quick take on Millard North, Bell West. I had a chance to see Millard North for a second time, and they're incredible. And I've also seen Bell West. They show down tonight at the Thunderdome. How big a gap is there? I know they'll play for a second time tonight, but is there just a different tier that West is on right now?
To this point, there definitely has been. Even a team like Gretna, who was number 2 before Millard North beat them, they pushed them as hard as anybody has all year, and Bell West just flipped the switch, and that thing was over. Southeast, kind of the same thing. They had a lead. That thing was close, and then like a 21-0 run or something like that.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. I just saw the update middle of the first half or whatever, and then saw the halftime score. Like, oh, okay then. But that's what they do. They're a complete team. Yep. So good defensively, and when they get hot offensively, then it's just not really much anybody can do at this point.
Hold that thought. More preps with Jacob Padilla on the way.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A few more thoughts from Jacob Padilla from Hail Varsity. We've spent time on Big Red basketball, Maryland this weekend on Sunday. We'll get thoughts on the women in a moment with Iowa. Jacob, we wrapped up segment 1 here on prep action as districts around the corner. And you have Millard North on the road, Bell West. That'll be awesome. I'm sure you're going to be all over that. I wanted to get your thoughts real quick. I'll have it tomorrow night locally here. Gretna and Southwest. I've seen a lot of Southwest, and they are highly talented and gave up 62 first-half points to Millard North, which was just it was just gorgeous basketball if you're a Millard North fan. I mean, they were awesome. They were beautiful to watch. Southwest regrouped and put a good push together to make it a little interesting, the final three. Southwest, we'll see where their season shakes out. It's a tough close for them. But give me a quick thought on Gretna and this game tomorrow night as they head to Southwest.
Yeah, will be an interesting matchup there with the length that Southwest can throw out there versus Gretna, who they play four guards around Jeff Roselle. They're all about 6'1" or so or under. Like they don't really have wings. That they don't have a ton of ball handling. It's a lot of Landon Pekorski, and then you've got a slasher and Alec Wilkins, a shooter and Alex Wilcoxon, who, man, he was really, really good in their game at Bellevue West that I watched last week. Nearly gave them a chance to win it, but it depends on Southwest, like how locked in are they defensively. They've got the length to make things difficult and to force Gretna into some tough shots, but they've got to execute and they've got to put in the effort. They got to be locked in. Again, giving up 62 points, I'm sure the last week of practices have not been pleasant for those guys. So we'll see how they bounce back. But Gretna, they've been rock solid all season. Like that kind of those four guys with Landon Pekorski, Alex Wilcoxon, Alec Wilkins, and Jeff Roselle. It's been kind of those four all season long, scoring the majority of their points every game. It's one of those four leading them away. It's kind of different every single game. You never know who's going to be hot that day. But those combinations, especially Wilkins, Wilcoxon, and Pekorski, those guys have been double digits almost every single game, especially every game that matters for them. So those guys are tough. It's a tough trio to defend. Skilled. Again, you got some lights out shooting with Wilcoxon, who's one of the best in the state at that. Pekorski's tough shot maker. He's a guy that they go to late in the clock. So it'll be an interesting contrast of styles there. I know Southwest has got their guys back in the lineup, so hopefully it'll be a fun game tomorrow.
Jacob, I'd just like to note quickly with that Millard North and Lincoln Southwest game, those teams combined to average 6 points per minute in the first half, which is just ridiculous scoring numbers. Jacob laughs just because that's so absurd. That's bonkers.
I ran out of ink with my score sheet. I did.
Yeah, but Jacob, before we get you out of here, I want to talk Husker women's basketball as they got a big matchup tomorrow with Iowa. I've seen that there's already, I believe, over 12,500 tickets sold for this game, which would make it a women's basketball attendance record for Pinnacle Bank Arena. And with Caitlin Clark coming to town, I don't think that's too shocking to hear, especially with Nebraska's bubble status. So quickly, can you just tell us what's on the line with Husker women's basketball tomorrow?
Yeah, that loss at Minnesota was super damaging. Both from their resume standpoint and from just kind of the momentum leading into this game. You would have liked to get that under your belt to come in feeling good with a really, really talented Iowa team coming in. Obviously, Caitlin Clark, triple-double every single night, can go for 40, can go for 15 assists, can beat you both ways. And then you've got Monica Zanano, who is just a beast inside to kind of balance that out. So with shooters around them. So it's a really tough team to stop. It's a team that, if you like offense, again, if you were a fan of that Millard North Southwest game, then I think you'll probably be a fan of this one. Because Nebraska's got to find a way to defend better than they did. Like you can't give up 90 points to a Minnesota team that have been struggling. So I have no idea what to expect from Nebraska at this point. I just slacked Drake Keeler, our women's basketball writer, after the game. This team does not make a lick of sense after that Minnesota loss. I don't know what to expect. You had Jazz Shelley going off for 37 in that game. We know she's capable of some ridiculous stuff. And they're going to need it because Clark's going to be getting those shots up. He's going to trying to remember and Nebraska's or Stretches has done a good job in forcing her to be a volume scorer more so than an efficient one. I don't know that Clark has just absolutely lit them on fire, and that's the reason that they've lost in recent matchups. But you still can't let her get 30 and dish out 10 assists because that means everybody else is going along with her. And then Nebraska's just got to got to find a way to hit some shots, to get the inside and outside going. They shot well from three. A lot of that was Shelley against Minnesota, but they just didn't really have an interior presence there. Markowski struggled in that one, didn't score much in the paint. So you got to find a way to be balanced offensively and then smart defensively. Don't give them easy opportunities, make them grind, make them have to work for everything they get.
Jacob, we'll be following you on Twitter at Jacob Padilla _ reading you with HailVarsity.com. And, of course, the new issue coming out here next week. Thanks for jumping on. We'll see you this weekend on the hardwood, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate you. There he is. Good stuff from Jacob Padilla. And a good rundown of hoops. Let's hear from Fred briefly. And Coach Hoiberg, his rundown on Maryland. He spoke earlier today as Nebraska gearing up here for that 4 o'clock tip on BTN.
This team, obviously, in Maryland is playing as well as anybody, not only in our league, but in the country right now. And that run they went on in the second half against Purdue, that's pretty hard to do. And they, open up a 20-point lead at one point on the number 3 team in the country. So we know that I think it's a team that's won 7 out of 8. And if we turn the ball over like we did at Maryland, it has a chance to be an ugly afternoon. If we take care of it and we have smart attack, pretty similar, I guess, to what we just saw at Rutgers, we're going to have a good chance in this one. But, there's a lot at stake, obviously, for our team right now, and we just have to continue to go out and play for each other, play the right way, and value every possession. That's going to be a huge key in the game on Sunday afternoon.
So Fred gets what the formula for success has been. Let's hear from Fred. He was asked earlier today, you know what's at stake? Does your team kind of see where they're at, what they could round out to be, and that's postseason basketball? Who'd have thought? Fred answered that question here. Has that been a conversation in the locker room beyond the end of the regular season?
Yeah, I don't think I have to have those conversations with the guys. They know what's at stake. They know the quality of basketball that we're playing right now. We're continuing to improve with our young players, basically with the new system that we've implemented since Emmanuel and Juwan have been out of the lineup, and we're just continuing to get better every time we step on the floor. But you can't step back and take a breath and take your foot off the gas. You have to keep doing the things that are making you successful. And I'm confident we will. I'm confident that our guys will continue to play with great effort, and that's all we can ask of our team. If you come in the locker room after the game and say you were the harder playing team and hopefully the more together team, then let the chips fall where they may. But, it's a group that has continued to compete, continued to prepare, and, we get 2 more days to get right for this game on Sunday.
Good from Fred. And final thought with Hoiberg. Bill Doleman coming up in 15 minutes. Brady Oltmans, Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, it's Hail Varsity Radio. If you're just finding us on the AM dial in Lincoln, it's now 1240. You can still hear us on the AM in Omaha, 590. Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, 1460, 1550. News Talk 900 Columbus, AM 900 and 101.5 FM Lincoln. Stream the show. Catch us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Do that and enjoy. So, hey, if you're so brave, see our beautiful faces to go along with the voices. Let's hear a little bit more from Fred Hoiberg. We just heard, as we wrapped up that last segment with Fred, on the situation Nebraska's in, from spoiler to maybe a postseason basketball team. Who'd have thought? Go ahead and let yourself go there. If you're a Nebraska basketball fan, you've earned it. This team's earned it, but there's still work to do. They know that.
But you have a great resume-building chance on Sunday with Maryland, who just took down Purdue, the top team in the Big Ten, and they took them down convincingly. And I think we spoke yesterday on the show about how this Maryland team has been pretty different at home versus on the road this season. That's why this game seems so potentially huge for this Husker basketball team. Is Maryland did what they're supposed to do at home last night, and that's that they've been phenomenal all year. They take down Purdue, and now let down spot going to Pinnacle Bank Arena, where Nebraska's been great.
The Turtle's going to put his feet up, pat themselves on the back, feel fat, you hope. You hope if you're Nebraska, they come in, and they're clearly not the same team. But last part from Fred here on this final stretch.
And right now it's one at a time. It's a weird schedule. I mean, we played so many games in a short amount of time, and then we had to take 2 days off, which I don't love, but we had to by rule. And, we get another week after this one before the next game. So it's not an ideal time to get a bye week just with the way we're playing right now. 2 games in 12 days or whatever it is. But, it is what it is. It's the schedule that we were given, and we just need to continue to do the things that are making us a solid basketball team right now.
They are. They've bought in. They've been comfortable. Just an email in from Nick. I cannot repeat what he called me, but he's wishing a happy birthday.
Okay. I think whenever you come with the nice message like that, you have the right to call you a mean name. That's kind of that's kind of how how dudes work. It
is. It's a term of endearment.
Yes.
It's pretty good. Yes. Someday we'll have jerseys and T-shirts for our golf team name, but never ever to be uttered on air.
You'll have to tell me off air. I'm curious now.
Yeah, I know you are. Bill Doleman is, I think Bill's probably, what's the right attire for a Springsteen show? 40 years ago, it's probably a tank top or some sort of popped collar or leather so he could dance in the dark. Boss is good stuff. Doleman's on assignment, shall we say, to see Bruce Springsteen down in Kansas City this weekend. So we will run him down, get his take on some Husker football thoughts. Husker baseball gets rocking in San Diego about 8 o'clock our time. And Emmett Olson, man, going to get the ball, and we'll see where Nebraska's offense can start. Hour 2's on the way with Hail Varsity.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Football on his mind, but more so Bruce Springsteen is in Kansas City to see Bill Doleman. We say hi to the pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, at Bill Doleman on Twitter. Billy D, back in a hotel, I see. How we doing? You're muted, my friend.
No, he's not muted, unfortunately. I'm not sure. Ooh, his mic. Uh-oh, something's going wrong with Billy D's mic.
Bill has a hammer out and is going to go wage war in a moment.
It's got to be something down in those settings with audio, Bill, just to help you out here from behind the scenes. See if that helps you out.
So we're 20-second timeout for Bill Doleman. He's going to scream at his team.
He had the lighting set up so perfectly too. I saw him working on it. He had the cell phone right and the laptop right. And
yeah, I mean it was good to go. And we were just going to phone. And do we have you now?
I doubt it. Yeah, no. Well, let's give him a phone call.
Yeah, we're going to give him a phone call. So, Bill, you just hang tight. But
we could keep him on stream while he's on the phone. Yeah,
that'd be unique. Him and only him. That'd be good.
Do it.
So we're going to call Bill Doleman here. Numbers for you to get in: 489-1240, 489-1240. Numbers to dial up here on Hail Varsity Radio. Brady Oltmans going to be with us. He's been doing great work running down the different options at some of the positions on offense and defense for Nebraska. We now have him, I believe, or not. Do we have him? Maybe? No? All right, so this is gorgeous. Bill Doleman with us, but he's down in KC to see Bruce Springsteen. I'm anxious to get his take on Nebraska's fourth quarter misery and how that can be different. Let's go to Bill Doleman. Now, Pride of Fairbury, thanks for working this out with us. How you feeling, man? You've seen the boss a few times, and the boss has seen you a few times.
Yeah. He always points me out, when I'm in the crowd I think this will be
you and
5.
Courtney Cox, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're at 5 now or so. So I assume he's in town because when I was driving into Kansas City, I saw a Spirit Airlines flight land at KCI, and I assume that's how he probably travels.
Sure,
Spirit Airlines,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Good work.
Hey, better than Southwest still.
We're not going to get sued, but we will, knock on wood. Junior made it down to Arizona today.
That's good news.
To see Joe Mama, which is good, and Grandma. But
yep.
So. Okay, Springsteen's 73. I was just playing his last show last night off my phone, off of YouTube, and he was in Austin, rocking and rolling, Born to Run. Is he pretty consistent with closing with Born to Run? What's his encore go-to?
That's usually kind of toward that's like in the last set of maybe 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. 10th Avenue is usually in that mix. Rosalita's toward the end. Thunder Road. I think he's closing with I'll See You in My Dreams or something. So, but it's always a great show. And for dude 73, I've seen some clips. It should be another great one.
That's awesome. Bill Doleman with us. Bill, let's talk Nebraska football. Coach Rule continuing the interview rounds. And he really talked about the fourth quarter, and I thought this was interesting when he was talking with Sam McEwen. Everyone talks about the onside. We all talk about the international incident, the onside kick. But he's like, dudes, you had the lead in the fourth quarter, and that's when do you think Nebraska got away from? I don't know that it was a conscious effort to get away from power football in the fourth quarter post-TO, and I'm talking the Solich era, but Nebraska just, people caught up or out-muscled Nebraska at some point the last 20 years, and that's shown up a lot in the fourth quarter.
I think that culture was kind of born in the Callahan era because there was such an NFL mentality and approach to practice. And I've been hearing a lot about practice and the number of stations and the number of players and cutting down the numbers of walk-ons. And I get all of that. But, I've talked about it so many times on the show, watching those 4 stations do their work, practice after practice after practice, so that everybody was getting a relatively equal number of reps from, maybe if you are a walk-on or 4th or 5th teamer, maybe you were getting 60 to 70, whereas starters were getting 70 to 80 to 100, okay? And I remember going to some of Callahan's practices, and you would see a lot of guys, if you weren't on that first or second unit, standing around and watching. And I really think that there was that mentality for those players who were lower on the depth chart, younger on the depth chart. And when your practice habits became standing around, that eventually you're going to be able to be like the pros, where starters in the NFL don't get a significant number of reps. I mean, maybe 20 to 25, I remember guys saying. And so if you're the backup, and that's how you've practiced for 2 or 3 years, or 1 or 2 years anyway, and then when it's your turn, you've got to kind of flip that switch that you are going to be the starter, and it's not going to be a physically demanding practice day in and day out. And I really think that culture came from the NFL. And then Mike Riley, God love him, who had NFL experience, played powder puff football in the Pac-12, and it's just never been replicated to where it was when, if you were a guy who walked on as a freshman, you're 15, you're getting, you're busting ass every day, and you're getting a ton of reps, so that when it was seamless when it became your time. And when you got those opportunities in the fourth quarter and Nebraska was up 49-7, you were playing. And I really think that it was when that shift to the pro mentality came in that got lost.
Well, but there was some years under Bo Pelini where that mentality was still around. Because I can think very specifically of some games, and this might not define the whole tenure, but that inaugural home Big Ten game against Ohio State where Ohio State jumps out on you, you really rode Rex Burkhead in the third and fourth quarter there to get back into that game and eventually close it out. And twice against Michigan, you rode that ground attack in the second half. At home against Miami, you rode that ground attack in the second half. That was at least existent against Bo Pelini, but then it went right back away under Mike Riley. And I don't think the Bo Pelini era ever quite reached the Tom Osborne era of fourth quarter physicality. I
totally see that point to you. And I think to a certain extent, people kind of forget the Pelini era, because there was such a definition of the line definition between this Osborne and Solich era. Let's be fair to Frank. To when the declaration was made, we will not gravitate toward mediocrity. Instead, we will sprint toward it. And that we needed to have a certain type of player. That was just, it was, Nebraska was producing as many NFL players in the 40-year Devaney Osborne era. And again, Solich, we're producing as many or more NFL players as everybody else, and all of a sudden we're going to change. But I do think that to a certain extent that the Pelini era, because it was so volatile, and there were times where people would kind of hide their eyes as to what was being said about Bo, that people kind of forget a little bit about that. There was great success with Pelini that was overshadowed by the off the field and the tantrums or whatever the case might have been. But I really think that the last 20 years have been defined by Callahan, Riley, and for whatever ineptitude Scott brought to the table that people didn't expect that you kind of forget that Bo was in there. Bo's teams had a toughness, they had a mentality, they had a physicality to them, but it just kind of gets lost in the other stuff.
Well, I think that kind of shows that maybe this turnaround for Matt Rhule, at least in mentality, might not take as long as some national media folks seem to think, because Bo had that mentality of the team turned around within an offseason, where Callahan's teams, as we've kind of gone over, didn't have that third quarter, fourth quarter physical grinded out mentality. And then Pelini's teams were able to get that within 1 year of him being on campus, and you saw the results come with that. So I think that might be all the evidence you need that maybe Nebraska isn't quite as far away as some people seem to think now that Matt Rhule has taken the reins.
And I don't think that's all on Matt Rhule to flip the switch. And, in Rhule's conversation this week, I think it was in the World Herald, I think toward the end of it, there was a line that said, might take a while to get there. But I got to believe that there is a mentality within the players who are in the system right now who are tired of having the label of whatever, being a part, not winning. There's talented players in there. This is not a Temple turnaround. This is not a Baylor turnaround. And, that article about the fourth quarter and being in games and all of those, as you read through it, you're going, oh, God, I remember that, and I remember that. They have been close, right? At some point, that punt is going to go in the right direction. The Illinois punter is not going to run for 48 yards on 3rd and 14. At some point, that team is going to make the play that needs to be made, and maybe it's in the first quarter, maybe it's in the fourth quarter, but I got to believe that the talent is there and the hunger is there, that the players who are ready for a fresh start and hear what Matt Rhule is saying, and the staff that they're ready to turn that corner now. I mean, I'm putting my faith in that and my hope in that maybe, but I really believe that there are players right now that are saying, oh, now's our time and we're going to do it.
It's a mentality, and I think he'll help with that mentality. When it comes to confidence, you got to see it happen to really truly have confidence. But I think the preparation combined with the mentality, they're out moving weight in snow this morning on the field of Memorial Stadium. So it's not just all sorts of talk. There's some walk along with this, and we'll see where Nebraska's at. But, yeah, development's going to be key, and he'll try and get there. And, yeah, it's going to be about being the tougher team in the fourth quarter. And also, so there's some instances you're not going to be the fresher team in the fourth quarter, but he wants to tweak that a little bit too, Bill, where there are more bodies that are going to be in. So if you're Ty Robinson, you've not already waged 70 snaps before before it's the fourth quarter.
But that has to come in practice. There has to be a significant rotation of players. And I kind of gleaned that from that article that, there are going to be a lot of reps to be given. whatever, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that it's not going to be a lot of standing around, that players are going to be prepared to play. And as much as I dislike recruiting, that I dislike the 4 fingers in the air for the fourth quarter bit that we see all the time, It's like it ought to be 1. And then it ought to be 2, and then it ought to be 3. You can't wait to the fourth quarter and say, now we're going to turn it on. It's got to be from the go. Mm-hmm. And I would love teams to go second quarter, we've laid the groundwork in the first, and we're going to bury you in the second quarter so that you have to get to halftime. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to have the energy to come out in the third quarter. But to sit there and put 4 fingers up like, now we're going to turn it on, when it's 36-10, well, that doesn't do anybody any good. You got to come out of the gate right away, so that doesn't come down to the international one play that's an international incident, right? Incident. I mean, it has to be established early on that you are the more physical team out of the gate, and not we're going to turn it on and at the end and we'll hope the score we're close.
The PTSD that has existed the last 20 years, there's been one game-changing play in some of these debacles, be it the onside, be it a missed tackle against UCLA by Randy Gregory, okay, where this is the Bo era, but the UCLA goes on a Wooden-esque 38-0 scoring run, okay, in the all-black alternate uniforms. It's not the blocked punt against Iowa that sparks things. It's one play that has kind of flipped the oh no, here we go again for this team in different eras of different coaching staffs.
Okay, now you've triggered me from recruiting to 4 fingers to alternative uniforms. I'm here to have a good time, but let me go back to one of the most famous plays in Nebraska football history, the Tommy Frazier run against Florida. Right? Everybody is enamored with how many tackles that he broke, and Jim Nance's call and all that. I personally, I don't even think that's in the top 5 plays of that game. Lawrence Phillips had a couple of touchdown runs in that, or certainly one in the first quarter that was absolutely spectacular. But Tommy Frazier's run came in the fourth quarter when Nebraska had beaten the hell out of Florida for 3 quarters. Mm-hmm. I mean, that game was over at halftime. So it was, and I don't want to take away from Tommy's effort because he was still burying them in the fourth quarter. That's what we did back then. But that Florida team, that touchdown run started in the first quarter and in the second quarter. And the white flags were up in the third quarter, and they just could not tackle the guy when it came. So that wasn't a superhuman fourth quarter effort. That play was made at the kickoff, and that was the difference. The same with Corey Schlesinger, 2 touchdown runs against Miami. That was 3.5 quarters of ass kicking, and that was the money that paid off in the fourth quarter.
Bill, when you talk to Bruce, when he asks you what you want to hear, tell him your boy Schmidt really wants State Trooper tonight.
Let me text him real quick.
For the Nebraska,
I'll try to get that in for you.
From the Nebraska album, I need to hear State Trooper. And you're not this guy, but you would raise your phone and record, I'm sure, for me and send me
absolutely.
A clip, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Bill Doleman's going to be burning lasers through people that are standing in front of him and distracting his friend Bruce, trying to film the show. That Bill Doleman's not that guy, but Bill Doleman, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor, on assignment. Bruce Springsteen gets to see Bill Doleman tonight.
Or as we affectionately call him, Bryce Saperstein. I'm down here with all my Killer Bee buddies from college, and Bruce is just another one of them.
That's awesome. Bill, we'll talk next week. Thanks for the time, bud.
All right, see you, boys.
There he is, Bill Doleman. Brady Oltmans on the way.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Brady Oltmans with us. Who's on the horn?
We've got John on the line.
John, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I figured out where you're at. I got close to 60 friends of mine that listen to you that are in my stage of life, and I finally called and talked to your boss for a while, and she sort of told me where you guys were, and I told her where you were very fortunate to still have you. I said I start in the morning at 6, and then I explain the shows that I listen to. So it's pretty much there, except for Jim Rome.
Yeah, we're over on 10 where we're staying on 1015, but AM wise we're 1240. John, you going to Maryland this weekend to see Nebraska?
Well, no, I'm not. But I guess the question I'm asking, I'm really encouraged about how we're playing, and I hope whatever turns out that we're going to be keeping the coach. I think with all the diversities. He's done a really good job this year.
Yeah, John, thanks for the phone call, bud. Thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate you, and I don't think Fred's a question anymore.
Three weeks ago it was. The fan sentiment has definitely flipped with how this Husker basketball team has played over the past couple weeks because they play in a way that it's kind of the same, the laundry list of things we wanted with the Husker football team, a team that plays in a way that'll make the state of Nebraska proud with effort, intensity. You know what? Even if the odds are stacked against you, you're still going to continue to play hard. That's what this Husker basketball team has shown over the past couple weeks, and I think Fred and this team has been able to win a whole bunch of fans back over the past couple weeks by playing in that way.
Yeah, he's done it. We say hi to Brady Oltmans. Brady had to take a phone call there, my man. Thanks for hanging tight with us. We're streaming Brady live. Can watch our interviews, of course, with Hail Varsity, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle. Brady, let's talk about old Roll Tide, sending some love to Carter Nelson of Ainsworth, the stud tight end. Has had Notre Dame, has had the SEC programs, has had Nebraska in on him, over 2 staffs. And now St. Nick sending his regards. I guess we shouldn't be surprised about Carter.
No, and I right afterwards, obviously, I texted Ainsworth coach Jesse Owen, and I just kind of congratulated him. Said, "Well, now Nick Saban has watched some 8-man football in Nebraska. I
love it.
There's no such thing as a hidden gem anymore." But I haven't really heard this anywhere else, and I think it's definitely worth noting. New Alabama offensive coordinator Tommy Rees was at Notre Dame. And Tommy and Marcus Freeman flew to Ainsworth to recruit Carter in the open recruiting period. So I think that there might be a little crossover there because I think he might have been on Alabama's radar before, and I can't confirm it because I can't talk to Nick or Tommy about it.
We'll work on that. Doleman can get a hold of Springsteen and Saban for you, all right?
I appreciate that. And Johnny 99 for me, please.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely some crossover there, and I think that's kind of why Alabama ultimately offered Carter is a little bit of that Tommy Rees kind of crossover from Notre Dame.
Well, that raises. I mean, it shouldn't because it's been borderless here, specifically the last 5 years, where there's been a lot of squads. Oklahoma, Auburn, Iowa has been pretty consistent in Nebraska. Iowa State had a couple of really good gets this last recruiting cycle, but now you are seeing some rural studs get noticed, and noticed by arguably the greatest in this generation, and that's Nick Saban. But what real quick? What's your take on Carter and just the recruiting process right now? What's the word with his interest with Nebraska, and then also that allure of some other programs right now?
Well, he's certainly got a lot of schools after him. I think he's kind of just taken this one step at a time. I don't think, from talking with him and everybody over at Ainsworth, he doesn't really have a timetable set right now. He'll probably shop around some schools. I haven't heard if he wants to make a decision or a commitment going in before his senior year, like a lot of people like to do before that season gets going. But he's got enough schools around him. I think that it's definitely going to make his recruitment interesting. But obviously, Nebraska's coaching staff has made sure that he is a priority for them. And I think that there's always something to be said in that, in their recruitment of him to keep him in state.
Brady, one of the things we talked about yesterday on the show was the fact that Nebraska's had a real battle to go get whoever the top player is going to be in the state for the past 4 or 5 seasons, just with Malachi Coleman, Carter Nelson. You look back to last year where you have the kid out of Omaha, Jackson, the linebacker, Devin Jackson. You have Vontae Dickerson. If you put Thomas Fidone in there as being a Council Bluffs kid, that's another kid that counts for that. It just really feels like whoever the number one recruit in the state is going to be in any given year, the who's who of college football is coming to Nebraska to recruit. It's a big departure from what a lot of Nebraskans are used to.
Yeah, and I think it's different with like the metro areas and stuff. You're always going to get eyes on Lincoln and Omaha. I think if you're a good ball player there, it kind of pops out. And I know from talking with the guys over in Ainsworth, they were curious if they were going to get the big time college eyes on him in Ainsworth. I mean, Valentine's really the closest big time school there, and even at Valentine's not a huge classification. So they really were really curious if they were even going to get the same looks that everybody else was getting. Now, obviously, with all the camps and everything you can go to, that in film, it bridges the gap a little bit and cream rises to the top. So I think even with all of like Malachi last year and was a good get for the Rule coaching staff, I think Carter is going to be a real big test of, they're coming in the first big recruiting cycle. You've got to lock down one of the most athletic tight ends in a position that I think Marcus Satterfield likes to use, but Matt Rule hasn't really used as much historically. You got to keep an athlete of that caliber in state if you can.
Is tight end a position of need, though, Brady, for Nebraska, where if Nebraska were to lose out on Nelson to, say, Bama or Notre Dame or whoever is coming to town recruiting him, is that a big loss just considering what Nebraska has in the tight end room now? Or do you keep coming back to the fact that you need to show these other schools that you're going to lock down your in-state borders as the new staff coming into Nebraska?
I wouldn't classify it so much as a position of need, although I think that they would like a young incoming freshman tight end. I think a lot of it is that this Rule coaching staff is really adamant about moving players to different positions to where they fit best. They want to recruit athletes, speed, size, skill, wherever they can. Even looking at the spring roster and positional breakdowns, there's really no handcuffing guys to certain positions. I mean, if a good athlete fits in at a different position that they can work him in at and be a little bit better, fit his skill sets better, they're going to do that. So you want to recruit the athlete above all else. And I think that Rule and Tony White on defense have both kind of said that. So if you can recruit athletes over position players, you want to do that and then kind of see where they fit in best in your system.
Brady Oltmans with us here on Hail Varsity Radio at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. And, of course, read him with hailvarsity.com and magazine. Tight end's an interesting position that we focused in on. Brady, you look at some of the numbers and projected bodies. Tell me a little bit here about the wide receiver room. And we talk about Alante Brown being a departure here. You've got Billy Kemp that's maybe your new pace car, so to speak. I want your thoughts on moving forward, how that receiver room could shake out, and what some of your prospects or interest level is here. Who are some guys you're watching moving into this spring session?
Well, it's interesting because it's a really crowded room, and there's going to be a lot of. They need some attrition to happen just by scholarship numbers to get down to that 85. And I think wide receiver room is an obvious candidate to lose a couple of numbers. Now with Alante, from what I've heard, he's not out of the fold entirely. I think that could be a situation where if he wanted to come back, I think this coaching staff might welcome him back in. But I also think that he wasn't a shoo-in candidate for big production. You mentioned Billy Kemp. He could be a pace car, but they've spoken very highly of him being a return guy, that explosive kind of return man. I'd almost imagine at this point him with Tommy Hill because he's clocked into some big measurables that they've measured already this spring and during winter workouts. The ones that it might be a cop out, but the ones that I'm excited to see are like Malachi Coleman, incoming wide receivers. Where do they rank in terms of development, because the Rule coaching staff likes to develop. That's they've made their bread and butter on it versus the talent that's already at Nebraska. I mean, Matt Rule has said before, the previous coaching staff and Scott Frost did a good job of talent, noticing talent, developing it was kind of where they faltered in recent years. So I'd like to see kind of where they're identifying talent that comes in. Where is that up against, guys who have been in the system in the college game for a couple of years now?
Do you think, yes or no, do you think Nebraska's a tough football team? physically, mentally?
I think those guys who have been around for 3 years, I think you have to be tough. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're playing on a team that hasn't made a bowl game in 6 years, and you're, for the large parts of an entire state, people look up to you, and you haven't fit their expectations, whether deservedly or not. You're the butt of national jokes after you lose to Georgia Southern and your coach is gone. A lot of these guys haven't had the same positional coach every single year that they've been at Nebraska.
Well, they've had 4.
Yeah. Like it takes a little bit of callous, to get to where you are now, to still want to push it. And then when Rule comes in with this new coaching staff and his winter workouts, they're pushing these guys, kind of saying this is going to be the new standard and it's going to take a lot of hard work. And if you got to be prepared for it. We saw this morning with the winter workouts, in the stadium and pushing sled. Like this is the standard now. And if you're not tough, you're not going to last right now.
Elijah was out there doing snow angels in the north end zone.
That's not true. I don't think it's contestable that these guys are tougher than you and me. I think the question is are they tougher than Michigan? Are they tougher than the who's who of the Big Ten?
Tougher than Sparty in the fourth quarter?
Yeah,
that is the question, because that's the result hasn't shown in the form of a win, and that's got to be demoralizing to them. Brady, about 40 seconds here. What's coming up from you? What are you working on this weekend? I know the previews have been great. You've been doing a great job kind of tracking different position groups.
Yeah, just keep plugging away on some of the positional breakdowns. We're doing a quick look in at all of those going into the spring, and then kind of doing a little bit of seed work for some stories down the line, just kind of looking at what's going down the pike and how the spring game and spring season might end up looking like for Nebraska.
That'll be good. Brady Oltmans. Find him on Twitter at Brady Oltmans. Read him with HailVarsity.com and magazine, and he'll be tracking all things Big Red this weekend and maybe get a picture of a corgi or two in the winter weather. Brady, we'll see you this weekend. Thanks for a few minutes, bud.
Appreciate you guys.
There he is. Good stuff from Brady. Quick time out. Pride of Chicago, VSiN Sports Network. It's Danny Burke with some future basketball bets for the tourney.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Danny Burke with us, VSiN Sports Network, Burke's Best Bets. Busy weekend ahead at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, what's shaking, man? How we doing? Did you survive the Super Bowl?
We did survive the Super Bowl. We were sweating out KC +2. Came home for us, so we're very content about that result. And, ended up about 5-2 with our props. So it was a good end to a very up-and-down season, but we ended up on top, so we'll take it. I enjoyed it thoroughly and hope you guys did as well.
We did. Good ball game, good finish, and lots of drama. I mean, both quarterbacks.
Good finish. That's one way to put it.
Well, what I'm saying, it was 38-35. It wasn't 65-7. All right. So, Daddy, let's look at college basketball. We're just a few weeks away from Selection Sunday. Who do you like for maybe a strong futures play come March?
Yeah. So honestly, I'll be pretty blunt about this. I think the strategy, because of how even keel, or I guess more like a parity fill type of field it seems, you may just want to wait until the bracket is released and then jump in on it. Now, I realize if you wait, you're not going to get as good of odds for some teams, but also some may not alter to the point where it's not worth betting. You know what I mean? Like if you wait, you could see their path and go, all right, maybe I missed it by $1 or $2 on the odds, but now I feel more confident in their path and their journey and their setup. And I think I can still make a good bet on it instead of kind of just, you're not throwing a dart. I mean, you are, but not the sense of not knowing what their path is if you're doing it now. So that's probably what I'll do. But if I did have to make a few selections right now, I still think you're set up fairly nicely with Kansas. I know it's really hard to replicate, but the fact that you can get double-digit odds with them right now, about 12-1 in a lot of shops, I just feel like by the time we get to the tournament, that number is not going to get there, and Kansas will take you deep enough to at least give you options to hedge out, cash out, or just feel confident enough that this team can make another run to the Final Four. So I don't hate the idea of investing in Kansas again. Not as many people seem to be on the same page with me as this one, but I kind of like Arizona as a sneaky team at 14-1. I just really like the way they play their offense, the pace and tempo they display on that side of the ball. I think it could be enough to catch them on a hot streak throughout the tournament, and their athleticism can put them over the top with some teams. We have seen the Wildcats disappoint us, or at least myself, in the past with the tournament, so wouldn't be shocked if it occurred again. But I do like Arizona a little bit at 14-1. And then for a tad bit of a longer shot, I don't mind it. It's going to stink to say this on the air, Schmitty, but I don't mind Creighton at 25-1. Although I think in some spots I'm just looking at one book right now. I think if I'm not mistaken, you could have got them at like 30-1. And if you can still get them in the 30-1 range, again, it's not me saying that I guarantee they're going to win or think they're going to win, but I think they could be in a position to go on a run. And then that number is going to drastically alter by the time we get close to the Elite Eight Final Four. But you'll be sitting on a 30-1 ticket and be feeling pretty dang good about your selection. So I think Creighton's a good enough team, especially offensively, to put you in that type of position to maybe give you some options with what to do with that 30-1 ticket. So those would probably be some of the three teams I'd consider. Look, I'd want to say Indiana, but man, their road splits are just killer. You can't really trust them in this tournament setting. And, yeah, I think a team like Iowa State, also a team that thrives at home, can't really trust them on the road as much, so I don't see as much value with them. And for a really short shot, I feel like Alabama would have to be the play. They're incredibly efficient both offensively and defensively, and if they stay healthy and keep that rhythm going, I think they deserve to be recognized as the top team in the country.
Danny, you mentioned Kansas to lead off that answer, but there's one problem with the Kansas Jayhawks, and that's that they'd be going back-to-back should they win this, and that's only happened, I believe, 8 times in history with the NCAA tournament that a team's gone back-to-back, and it's been 16 years since Florida did it last. So is that reason to stay away from Kansas? Is that, you know what, we're due to have a back-to-back national champion? Which side of the coin are you on there?
Yeah, I don't know. I really wouldn't freak out too much about it. I mean, certainly you have to be cognizant that it seldom happens, which that's the thing and the reason that I really haven't gotten invested with them at this point. But I also believe the fact that they've shown this consistency and starting to pick it up as of late, looking like a powerhouse team again, based on the price, it's probably worth an investment if you're looking, if you're like teetering back and forth, like, I don't know. I mean, you know, because of the history of the trends, like this is a team that's good enough to do it. And again, this year in college basketball, we literally say it every year, but it's shaping up to be an insane March Madness tournament. And a team that has that experience, has the head coach that they do, perhaps that would almost give you more leverage to wanting to back them because they've been in this type of position. And I get that they're a team that has some turnover like a lot of the other top squads, but that culture has been instilled with them, not as much with an Alabama or a Houston. Purdue certainly choked last year. The Pac-12 teams usually fall to the wayside. So that's why I think Kansas, if you're going with some of those blue blood programs in college basketball, is a team at a double-digit price that may be worth buying a little bit of stock in them. And again, it's not that you have to hang on to the ticket all the way. It's almost like if you get that bet, you're almost betting on them to get to the Final Four. I know you can make the bet to get to the Final Four, but my point is you can have that 11-1 ticket during the Final Four, and the odds that will be offered at that point will be like, I don't know, maybe plus 250 or 2-1, and then you can still look to make a profit that way. So that's why I think you can still put a little bit of stock into this Kansas team.
Danny, we'll wrap keeping with college basketball. Purdue, you mentioned how they stubbed their toe, blew up everyone's bracket a year ago. They're not unique in that. A lot of teams the last few years have done the dirty to you with your bracket. Do you have more faith in Purdue this year because of what went down last year? They've got the big dude in Edey, and then they've got shooters all around him. They've not been immune to a misstep here and there, but overall, they've also won quite a few close ball games. Do you have more faith in Purdue this dance season?
Yeah, in terms of comparing last year to this year, I mean, absolutely. And the biggest difference maker, of course, is Zach Edey, because he's finally realized how to utilize his big frame Whereas last year it was like, all right, great, we got a 7-footer. He'll sometimes be reliable, but now he finally is reliable. I mean, over 22 points per game. He's averaging a double-double. And this is a guy that you can absolutely just keep handing the ball off to him down low and let him work his magic. Our team's going to scheme against it? Sure. Will he get limited to some degree? Absolutely. But Purdue has had enough depth to really still work around that. And look, I'm not going to freak out if they lose some of these close games, and especially on the road. That's what you want in a team that you're going to want to kind of hitch your wagon on to win the tournament. The team that goes undefeated is a team that always has the pressure amount so high that makes it so much more difficult for them. You want your team to be chiseled along the way. If you want to compare it like Kansas City and Philadelphia, that's kind of the argument I made last week. Philadelphia was never tested. Their defense wasn't. Then they stepped up in class, and Patrick Mahomes didn't get stopped in the second half. So it's something like that where you want to have your backs against the wall. You want to deal with loss so you know how to overcome and work around it. And I think that's a big difference with this Purdue team. I'd rather have them have some of these tough losses and realize what their flaws are so they can adjust and make those corrections along the way and get ready for the tournament. So, look, realistically, if they're not making the Final Four at least, it's a disappointment. But just because of how college basketball is, the realistic expectation should be Elite Eight for sure if you have a 7-footer and you have the experience on this team like they do, and you're coming from a relatively speaking weaker Big Ten conference. So, yeah, I think Purdue definitely gets farther this season.
Danny Burke with us, VSiN Sports Network, at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Catch him with VSiN. Danny, we'll talk next week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, you bet, guys. Enjoy the weekend.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Friday with Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're back here on KFOR tomorrow morning at 7. Just again reiterating 1240 and 101.5 here locally in Lincoln. And, of course, hear us with our different affiliates across the state. Appreciate you doing that. Always stream the show. Can do so a couple of different ways. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Twitter, at HVarsity Radio. Always send emails. We'll get to those when we can. Chris at hailvarsity.com. And tomorrow morning, myself, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbel, in Lincoln, at least at 7.
But we do have a slight change to note for our Saturday morning show tomorrow morning.
For a moment, yes.
Yes, we will be on the air from 7 to 8 tomorrow morning here locally on KFOR, and then the second hour of the show will be a streaming-only option. The full show will be available in podcast form, and the full show will also be available via streaming. That's Hail Varsity's YouTube page, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter account, KFOR on Twitter, and hopefully by tomorrow, KFOR on Facebook as well. We'll have all those. So if you want the full show, check it out on streaming. We'll be there from 7 to 8, and we're working through some ways to get the full show available on the air on Saturdays.
Full 2 hours streamed for sure. But
that is the best way to check it out if you want the full show. The streaming option, it's great. You can see our lovely faces at 7 in the morning when we're both, we'd all rather be in bed. I'm kidding. I'm actually kidding there.
Once the show starts, no.
That's right.
I'm kidding. Get buckled up. Reminder to get the seatbelt in use. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We'll have plenty of takes on Nebraska's season opener against San Diego tonight. How's Emmett Olson fare on the hill? What's the offense do? And what kind of tone can be set this first weekend series? A lot of baseball, but it's exciting to have Will Bolton crew back in action. You can hear that, of course, with our affiliate 590. They'll have your home for Husker baseball all season long. So, Eric Bieniemy, he actually may be leaving Kansas City. They're trying to finalize things with the Washington Commanders as their offensive coordinator. So it's a lateral move, allegedly, and we'll see. I always kind of think this. I think if Bieniemy could have forced his way into some head coaching job, be it at Colorado a few years ago, or there's been other NFL stops he's made. He doesn't interview well. That's the word, all right? and he's making a couple $1 million a year, working with Mahomes, working with Andy Reid. If he truly wants to be a head coach somewhere, he should have been already based on his body of work as an OC. But this will give him some separation from, is it Andy Reid's brain or is it Eric Bieniemy? Is it a combination?
Is it just two guys who have the best quarterback in the league and everyone's going to have a good offense like that?
And Andy Reid's been there, done that with quarterbacks. He's done it in Philly and he's done it in Kansas City. Eric Bieniemy is incredible. All right, brilliant offensive mind. He might be a guy that's just happy being an OC and wants to get a raise. And he might just be the guy in waiting for Kansas City. Or he goes off to Washington, then comes back to get the job.
The Commanders have set a date of Sunday as being when they hope to have a deal done if Eric Bieniemy is their guy.
We'll see. Talk to you tomorrow at 7 with Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.